chapter 14.
Is it 14?
I think so.
Yeah, leadership.
Okay. So, walk me through real quick. We use the term leadership a lot, and we throw it around. What are we talking about in the context of organizational behavior when we talk about leadership, especially in regards to style and behaviors and things like that?
Mm-hmm. And the answer to this will depend on your training. So, my PhD was paid for by Gallup, and it was from the Gallup Leadership Institute. I'm surrounded by leadership scholars, some of the best in the world. The two guys that invented, if you ever heard of transformational leadership, two guys that invented it. That was one of them. He was in my office. So they, of course, would say, well, leadership is kind of what really matters, and management is that's just a job, right? The management crowd, who are training what's called organizational theory, they would say there are 4 functions of management. And I don't remember them all right now. It's like leading, organizing, controlling, and there's one other one I can't remember. But leading,
coordinating, maybe, I don't know.
Something. But leadership is a discipline of management. I think that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
As manager is a job, there's planning, there's organizing, right? Controlling and leading. Hey, I remembered them. That's what they are. Way to go. Ting. So it's a part of the management discipline. The reason why leadership people don't like that is because then that conveys the idea that you don't lead unless you're a manager. Mm-hmm. And that's what they say, well, that's ridiculous.
For sure.
So anyway, that's kind of how it fits in. If an effective manager will basically always be a leader. An effective leader may not be a manager.
For sure.
Okay. Study of leadership. Let's just play here for a minute. I'll just
That's a little Venn diagram for
yeah,
everybody.
right. I'll just riff here for a minute and just include or don't include whatever you want. Like this topic is freaking huge. So it's been studied scientifically since about 1907. And 1907, everybody's going to love this today, is the great man theory of leadership. And that's really what it was called. And the idea is that among the men, there are great men. And I don't know if they were using man as male or man as like mankind.
Mankind, yeah.
No idea. Wasn't there. But started being studied a little bit more scientifically, observation, data, hypotheses, stuff like that. And the idea is, what are the traits that constitute really effective leaders? And if you find those, then put that person in charge.
Right.
So it's 100% trait theory of leadership. And for a long time, it was believed you can't develop leadership. There are born leaders. There are born Winston Churchills. There are born Napoleons. Right? It's just who they are. You can't develop any of that stuff. And it was like that for quite a long time until leadership development literature started going, well...
When was that?
Maybe not. That was 1907.
Yeah.
When it kicked off. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. So the first time, maybe 20 years later, 30 years later, so we get to 1930s. You can Google if you're super interested. If there's any leadership geeks out there, you totally love this, you got to hit us up. But there's the Iowa studies and the Ohio State studies. That's where it really started, and it really turned into 2 factors of leadership. Pretty straightforward. Task-focused leadership, people-focused leadership.
Fair to say that a lot of original org behavior stuff started coming from those areas
too?
Yeah,
the Big Ten, Big 12. There's 12 schools in the Big Ten now, something like that. The Big Ten institutions have the strongest history in social sciences. So Iowa and Ohio State. And it started out with something as simple as giving Boy Scouts a chunk of soap and telling them to carve, an arrow or, just tell them to carve something. And you'd have a leader walking around being just 100% task focused. Here's what to do. Not mean, but not really considerate.
Right.
Like, I don't care about your feelings. Here's what to do. And then in the other crowd was someone who'd be just consideration. Like, how you feeling? Like, are you enjoying this? It's really cool what you did there. Stuff like that. And they found the consideration tended to have better performance. That was in the 30s. That was kind of how a lot of these things got kicked off. And there's a few other things they found. Hawthorne effect, stuff like that. That was done at that time. Those are some of the early studies. Fast forward, leadership really starts to take off 70s and then big time in the 80s. So the 70s, you had a guy named Bob House, mentioned earlier. Charismatic leadership, path goal theory. In the 60s, you had a guy, Fred Fiedler, contingency theory of leadership, which it's still used today. I mean, you and I talked about it. It's an awesome model.
For sure.
Contingency theory just means what you do as a leader is contingent upon the environment. There's a big fat assumption in Fiedler's work that he never lived down, and that is that people actually have the ability to change their leadership style. And I think now, looking back, most people would say, well, they have the ability, but it's really rare. Because usually in places of fear or stress or strain, we go to like our default. This is what we do.
Right.
So that was 60s, 70s, Bob House, again, charismatic path goal, which are still really, they're good theories. And then the 80s kind of went all over the place. Yeah. Leadership got really popular. All of a sudden, organizations would now pay for this stuff. So, everyone's got their idea. There's a really cool guy. His name was Chuck Manns, who came up with self leadership theory. I remember reading it, and I'm like, you got to be kidding. You're talking about like cybernetic loops in the mind and levels. I'm just like, dude, shut up. But a lot of people like his stuff. Yeah. So a lot of the theories that are laid out in the text came from that time period, 80s, 90s. One of the popular ones was called LMX. Leader Member Exchange Theory is kind of what goes. And there's, I'll just kind of rough a few basic tenets of the theory. One of them is that it looks at leaders and subordinates as just dyads, meaning like a relationship of two people. So there isn't this person leading these people.
Right.
There's this person leading this person, so it's dyadic. They came up with the idea of in-groups and out-groups. In-groups are privy to higher or more richer information exchange, more trusted with information, stuff like that. And in out-groups, they may not be like, paid different, but if you've ever heard the term like good old boys club, stuff like that, that's where some of this stuff, at least scientifically, would go, okay, well, they're parts of the in-group, and there's similarity attraction bias, right? Well, that person's like me, we both golf, we both hunt, whatever it is, and so they make their way to the in-group. There's more to LMX than that, but that's fine for a leader member exchange theory. In the 1980s was a big one, which is most of the way near the end of the chapter. They'll talk about transactional leadership, contingent reward, laissez-faire, and all this different stuff. That's actually one full theory. So my PhD advisor's name is Bruce Avolio. He and Bernie Bass are the ones that published on it. And the full range theory of leadership was trying to say from the worst leader possible to the best leader possible, here are the steps kind of along the way. Full range. So the worst is a French term called laissez-faire.
Hands up.
You don't know anything. Yeah. Of course, people come back and go, well, if you have a really good team that are smarter than you and you're just going to mess them up, wouldn't it be the best? So there's always those questions. But go ahead, you were going to say something.
That's intentional.
Right.
A lot of our Peter Principle folks who are getting promoted to their greatest level of competence or incompetence.
Right. Incompetence.
Don't get taught how to intervene. And how to engage especially when there's issues. Yeah. And a lot of times are laissez-faire, just hands off.
Right.
And it ends up creating.
It usually creates problems. Sometimes it works well for them because they don't get drug into it, and they could, like, I've seen this at larger organizations where they go, okay, that's those people's issues, and I'm already out looking for the next promotion. So, but laissez-faire is widely considered the worst form of leadership for sure. Infections just fester. Yeah. Work your way up. You have passive management by exception, and then active management by exception. So, 3 big categories: laissez-faire leadership, transactional leadership, transformational leadership. Okay. Transactional leadership has passive MBE, management by exception. That means all I do is I wait for someone to knock on my door and tell me there's a problem, and then I manage the exceptions. Right. And I go out and I deal with that. Active management by exception is when I actually go out and I look for the exception. And it could be like a good exception or a bad exception.
My stand-up meetings, and I'm sitting there and going, what are the things that are going on?
Right. The next level up from that is contingent reward. This is where we get the idea of a transactional relationship. The reward is contingent upon performance. This is considered a poor form of leadership. This is pay for performance. It works. It works really well if you do it right. Good systems, good metrics for performance. So contingent reward is the highest form of transactional leadership, and it just means people listen well and they study hard on a quiz, they do well, then you're going to give them an A. It's contingent upon what they do. Right? If you don't do that, it's seen as not fair. And if you do it, people are like, okay, great, that person's fair.
Justice flows into there, all that stuff. Yeah.
Working your way up from there, you get into the 4 I's, right? This is the 4 I's of transformational leadership. Inspirational motivation. I'm going to start with that one. Inspirational motivation, you've been around people who are inspiring. And there might be lots of reasons for it, but they can cast a vision well. They include the right people. They use the right symbols, stuff
Maybe
like
they have
that.
referent power.
Right,
Maybe, yeah.
totally. And they motivate you to do things well. Next level up, working our way through the eyes there is individual consideration. That is, you need something different than somebody else. And if you can do that in a way that doesn't look like favoritism and stuff like that, it's equality or equity argument. People are like, that person called me because I told, wow, 2 weeks ago I said I had a soccer game on Saturday with my daughter because she was in regionals.
Right.
I just got a text from my boss. Are you kidding me? Boom, big loyalty,
Right.
big commitment. Like,
Through the roof.
That person cares about me.
Yeah.
Big deal. That's back in the trust. You remember that? That's a benevolence thing. It's
Right.
like, this person, right? I didn't send that text to everybody. So individual consideration. What does this person need? Moving up. What was our third eye before idealized influence?
Intellectual.
Intellectual stimulation. Yeah. Transformational leaders. I've seen like a bit of the Socratic method, right? I don't want this to challenge you to put more effort in out there. I want you to think about it. Think about what you're doing. Think about vision and where we fit in. If you think it should go something, like I want you to tell me, do something different. I want to make you smarter in how you think about our work and why we're here in this organization in the first
you
place.
in that process versus tell.
Yeah. What do you care about? And so there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I like the Socratic method. And people come up. You can go up to an employee at any point and say, "Could we be using this machine to bale these bales of hay or whatever it is? Why do we do it like this?" It's because this is just what we do. No, that's mindless reliance on precedent. Why do we do it like this? You ever seen a better way? I don't know. Think about it. Let's go out for coffee next week. I'm just curious. I don't have an idea.
Right.
Maybe you feel like, I don't know.
Do some research.
Yeah.
Figure it out. Yeah.
So intellectual stimulation. Last one, idealized influence. This is basically charismatic leadership. Like the Brock story. That's somebody. I remember watching Alan Mullally sit at the table, and I'm like, the dude has just perfect posture, and he smiles at the right time, and when something disappoints him, he just looks. And if somebody's given bad excuses, seen this, he leans in, eyebrows up, and he goes, "Do you need me to do your job?" And when the guy starts to panic, he's like, just the way he dresses, the way he walks. A lot of times charismatic leaders have kind of weird little things. They have handlebar mustaches, or they only use cloth napkins, or they only wear, Crocs.
Eccentric.
I mean, just like, some Elon Musk, right? He's kind of a weird duck, right? And it's like, he's a really charismatic leader. Jeff Bezos, the dude's, 60, 65 years old, and he's pretty ripped, right? That's one of his things. So that's what I mean by the idealized influence. There's something unique about them that stands out. They're attractive. Physically, is just a compelling person. You lump all those together, that's transformational leadership. Transformational leadership means the leader is transforming the follower into a leader.
And that's that highest level?
Highest level of the influence. You go all the way from laissez-faire to transformational leadership. The product of laissez-faire is garbage. The product of transactional leadership is people do their jobs. The product of transformational leadership is people personally identify with the vision and they become leaders themselves.
And that's not to knock transactional leadership.
No, it's effective.
Yeah. You might need to use different forms and formats in different ways.
I would think the industry, the environment, the followers, that's back to the contingency. It has to matter.
Yeah, for
Right?
sure. Situational leadership. Want to walk through that real quick?
But Hersey and Blanchard.
Yeah, a great story about that. You ready for this?
Yeah.
I was doing consulting in the Columbia Basin. Went to one of the companies and I was like, hey, doing consulting. I do HR consulting. I do some in leadership consulting as well, and teams and other things. And the guy goes, we're good. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're good. My uncle's Ken Blanchard.
You're like, okay, you're probably good.
Yeah.
You're probably good. Right on.
Yeah, so he's Blanchard on Hersey and Blanchard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the situational constraints predict the type of leader that you should be.
For sure.
And there's situational leadership, contingency theory. They're all very similar. But here's kind of the long and the short of it. If you are dealing with a whole bunch of boneheads, they're all idiots. You need to be more direct, more clear, more firm. If you're dealing with SEAL Team 6, don't tell them what to do. They're better than you. Boundary span, get stuff out of the way, give them the resources, and let them. Most people are in between,
some of that stage of career as well, like entry-level
Totally.
employees, all the way to delegating.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Most people are somewhere in between, which means generally competent at their job. So in that environment, kind of a consideration of people-focused leadership style tends to be better. But if you have like really incompetent or really competent, probably don't want to talk to either one of them about their feelings. Just some of them you get out of you're task focused.
Yeah.
So anyway, the big logic there is read the environment.
Yeah, for sure. And you can. We actually put this into coaching as well. Like when you're in full delegation, but things start going on.
Yeah.
Start to moving backwards
Yep.
through the process.
Yep.
Okay, now we're gonna meet once a week.
Right.
As part of coaching, we're now gonna pull things
Right.
in. We're gonna be higher interaction, and then we'll move to lower interaction at some point. We're gonna talk about what's, then we're gonna talk about whys, and then we're gonna fully delegate.
And it is so fun when you get a lead and you start investing in them, they become coachable. And then you go, think back the last 6 months, what I've been talking about, situational leadership, pick someone on your team and go do it.
Yeah.
And then come back and tell me.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah. Substitutes.
Last thing. This is sort of related to what we just said. There are substitutes for leadership. The book also talks about neutralizers for leadership. So don't be so leadership, gung-ho that leadership is the most important thing, blah, blah, blah. Experience and ability are a couple of like really obvious substitutes. If you have a high caliber team, if you have a high experience team, well, okay, they actually don't need you that bad. If there's high turnover in the leadership role and there's low turnover in the team, evidence suggests, to get the job done, they don't need you that. Maybe to move forward, they do. But anyway, there's technology that can replace. It's fun. This is going to be really fun in the future talking about AI. There's a class, I think it might be at Cornell or might be at Harvard right now. They're having an entire section taught by AI. And they're testing it out just to see how it goes. What does it mean? What's it going to look like when AI is managing a group? AI is casting vision. It's fun. I think it's fun to think about. I like to sit back and go, it'll never happen. It'll never work. But they probably said that about the cell phone too.
It's a little scary too.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you imagine? Do you remember Dick Tracy phones and just going
yes.
I've got a watch on my hand that is more powerful than the Dick Tracy watch. It's unbelievable. It'll happen someday.
It's fun. It's happening soon.
The machines are coming.
That's right. I love Terminator 2.
Is that we're gonna end?
Great
the
movie. We still need people. We still need leaders.
And I hope what you're seeing, you're hoping that you're connecting the last chapter and this chapter together. That power and negotiation, or power and politics style, all that plays into if you're going to go into especially a management and a leadership position, whether you're leading as a member of the team or you're leading as somebody who has a formal leadership position. All these things aren't separate from each other. They intertwine,
all
interlink.
connected. You can't be a transformational leader without referent power. You can't use contingent reward without having reward power.
Yeah. And I think it's important to study yourself a little bit, know yourself a little bit. One of my favorite leaders is nothing like me. His name's Steve. Steve was a CFO that I got to be fortunate enough to be part of the hiring process with. And through the first 2 interviews, I realized this is a diamond in the proverbial rough.
Right.
And we have to have this person. Probably the first negotiation from a salary negotiation that I just got absolutely whooped on because we wanted
I'll pay
him.
you anything. Yeah.
We wanted him. We had to have him.
Right.
And was an incredible, effective leader in the organization. But nobody assigned me to his tutelage. I just sat under him.
Just took it.
I
Yeah.
went and I hung out with him as much as I could. But he wasn't charismatic. He didn't have a lot of referent power. But from a knowledge base and respect of his expert power,
Yeah, trustworthiness.
I trusted everything that came out of his mouth, and the amount of consideration that he had taught me a lot. And I didn't change who I was,
Right.
but I learned a lot
Added
from
your
that and
toolkit.
added it into my toolkit. And so as you grow as a leader, you'll add parts of your toolkit. Hopefully you don't start off as a laissez-faire leader.
Right.
Hopefully if that's your intention, you're probably not promoted into a leadership position. Hopefully you're displaying attributes that would be desirable from a leadership standpoint in an organization. You have high potential. and then you build your toolkit over time. So
Yeah, with lots of different. Well, I've had a lot of people pour into me as well.
yeah, for sure.
Take the meat, spit out the bones.
Never heard it that way, but
Take the good stuff.
separate the wheat from the chaff.
There we go. Let's go that way.
All right.
Should we keep going or just call it like
I
that?
think that's good. That's better than ending on Terminator.
I like it.
All right, cool. Leadership.
Peace.
Peace.
Beat ya.